In this video, I'm going to do a complete breakdown of symbols in Adobe Animate. I'll start the video by explaining the difference between shapes, graphic symbols, and movie clips, including how to modify them, animate them, and how to create symbol Inception. Then I'll show 3 different ways to create symbols, followed by how to replicate symbols to your advantage, and I'll end the video with an explanation and examples of the 3 types of symbol looping, which are loop, play once, and single frame. Let's go. All right, so let's start by taking a look at what the difference is between a shape and a symbol. So a shape is basically a piece of art that has been created by any of the drawing tools. So let's say the shape tool, maybe the brush tool, or the pencil tool, okay? So anything like that. When we click on a keyframe that has the shapes on it, you can see that a shape has all these little dots on it, which means that if we go back to our selection tool and click away, we can still modify any of these shapes. So click to the edge here, that little curvy thing, and modify the shape. We can add new things on. So if I go to the brush tool, maybe I put an eye there, and a mouth. And we can also erase. So if we go to the eraser, we can still erase things that we don't want. Just know that anything you draw over top of another shape is not actually over top of it. It's actually replaced it within that space. So if I go back to my selection tool and I click on this eye, I can move that eye by itself, and you'll see there's now a hole in the ghost here. So I can remove this one right here. And if there's any pieces that you don't want, let's say these dots, you can click on them and just go backspace to delete them because you're still in editing mode on a shape. In terms of animating a shape, we can go down here and click on the keyframe associated with the shape, right click, and yes, you can apply classic tween and motion tween, but those are going to turn it into a symbol. So that means the only one that we can apply that will directly animate the shape is right here, create shape tween. So when you click on that, you'll see this orange thing show up down here and a keyframe at the end. So now if we go to our selection tool, click away, and just like add a spike or 2 on the shoulders here, when we go back, you'll see that when it goes from this keyframe over here and we play and it goes to the other one, those shoulder spikes will grow out of his shoulder because we're animating the shape. Okay, so now let's move on to a graphic symbol, which is essentially a shape or a collection of shapes and layers that is nested or wrapped inside a container, like a composition in After Effects, a nest in Premiere Pro, or even a smart object in Photoshop. Where a shape had the dots on it, a symbol now has this blue box around it or container and no dots, which means that if we go to our selection tool and try to go to the edge to modify it, we can't. But if we go over to the free transform tool, we can now rotate it, resize it, squish it, squash it, and even skew it. We can also change the color effects over here if we want to. So if I go to tint, I can change the color to something else as well. In terms of animating a graphic symbol, we can go down to the keyframe, right click, and now we can not click create shape tween. We have to click create classic tween or motion tween. So if I go classic tween here, we'll see that it adds this purple section now. And if I go up here and insert a keyframe, we can now, all those things that I just showed you with the transform tool and with color, we can actually do all those same things to animate our container here that the shape is within. So now if I go back and watch this one, it will transform from that ghost to that one. Having said that, the main difference between a shape and a symbol is the fact that we can actually enter the container of the symbol. So if I go to free transform and I double click on the symbol, it'll take us to what seems like a brand new project. In fact, down here is a brand new timeline that is specific to the contents of this symbol, which is this ghost. And if we click on it, you see that it's actually now back to being a shape. So let's say I go down here and I add a new layer and then just color in these eyes really quick like this. And then maybe I go to my ghost graphic here and I create a shape tween. So I can go to this last keyframe, go to my selection tool, click away and add those like shoulder spikes again. Just make sure that you see here that the face that I put on, that disgusting pink face, it only is lasting 1 frame here. So if you want it to last this full 1 second, the full duration of this animation in here, then just go to this frame that lines up with this keyframe and then right click and add a frame down there, and that'll make sure the face stays on the whole time. Now, since this timeline up here called Ghost Graphic is actually paired with our main timeline right here, when we go back by clicking this back arrow thing right here, you'll see that everything that we did, that we applied within the symbol, like within the container, is now also being applied or updated on our main timeline as well. So the face and those spiky shoulder things. Now, this is important for two main reasons. The first is organization. So I have this dancing animation that I made, and if I double click on this symbol, you'll see that there's a lot of layers that went into making this animation. So if we go back to our main timeline, having all of those housed into one symbol that I can put on this one dancing layer on the main timeline makes it much more organized. The second thing that this allows us to do is something I like to call symbol inception. So if I go into this symbol again, like into the container, you'll see that this time I don't have all of these as shapes. They're actually all symbols themselves. So if I go over to the library, you'll see that every single part of her body is a separate symbol over here, which means that I can now double click on any of these. So if I go to torso here and double click, that'll open up a brand new level of inception once again. So a brand new timeline for torso right here that we can see is now a shape once again, which means that I can click away, maybe go to my brush tool, and let's pick, a random color here. So let's go blue and just put a dot right there. So now when I go from torso right here, so this is the new timeline here. If I go back, I'm going to be going to dancing, which is that dancing symbol, and we can see the blue dot is there. And if I go back one more level, it'll be back to our main timeline and the blue dot is still there. But on top of that, we can also now animate this container that will move all of it. So despite the fact that I have all these animations happening here, she's just dancing in place, I can now go back to my main timeline, and on that dancing symbol layer, let's just go right click and create a classic tween. At the end here, I will just put a keyframe, and then I'm just gonna mess with a few things within this free transform thing. So I'm gonna just shrink her down a bit. I'm gonna maybe rotate just a touch like that, and maybe move her kind of back like she dances away. Okay, so now we can see here that yes, all of those movements that were happening within the symbol are going to be happening within this container still, but she's also going to be moving through the scene. So dancing, dancing, dancing to back there. The difference between a graphic symbol and a movie clip symbol is that a graphic symbol will play the full animation or whatever you've done to it right in your timeline. So as we watch it here, we can see it on the stage and it's animating. But if you notice here, the movie clip is not. We don't see anything happening there, despite the fact that I did go into this one and apply the animation to it. We can see it here because within its container, like within the symbol here, this is actually just a shape and it's been shape tweened. So that's why we can see it happening. But when we go back and we see the actual movie clip, look, nothing is happening. The only time you can see a movie clip is if you go up to Control and you go to Test Movie. Now we can see it actually happening there. So if you can't see it, what would be the point in using a movie clip? Well, it does have, if we click on it, you'll see over here that we actually have more advanced control over the visual elements. We can add blending modes, filters, vanishing point, right? There's a whole bunch of other stuff that we can apply here that if we click on our graphic symbol, we don't have those choices for. But realistically, most of the time, you're going to be using a graphic symbol. Okay, so at this point, you're probably wondering like, hey, well, how do I even make a symbol? Well, there's kind of three different ways to do it. The first way is from scratch. So if you draw anything with your drawing tool, so I'm just going to kind of redraw this car, but I'll make a yellow version this time. All you have to do is click on the keyframe that goes with that one object that you just drew, go up to modify and then convert to symbol or F8. That will bring up this menu and then just name it. So I'm going to call this one from scratch. And then for type, as we just talked about, most of the time you're going to pick graphic and then click OK. As you can see, we now have the blue line around this symbol right here, which we can double click to enter, and then add new layers to, let's say, add the wheels. So I'll just kind of go opposite here and add these 2 wheels. If we now go over to our library, you'll see that that's where our symbols are stored. So this one is called From Scratch, and it was stored right there. You can see that there's Ghost Graphic in here and Ghost Movie Clip as well, which are the ones that we saw earlier in the tutorial. The second way to create a symbol is just to go up to Insert and then go New Symbol. So I'm just going to call this one New. I'm going to select Graphic again, click OK. That'll bring up a blank canvas for your symbol here, and then just do the same thing we just did. So I'm going to draw the body on layer 1, and I'm just going to add another layer and change the wheels to new wheels there for layer 2. And if we go over here to our library again, you'll see now we have one called New that'll have all those pieces on it. And then the third way to make a symbol is kind of a combination between those two. So as you can see, I have wheel 1, wheel 2, and car here for this one that I drew previously. All you have to do is highlight the keyframes, right click, and go cut or copy frame. So I'm going to go cut, then go up to Insert and New Symbol again. Call this one cut or whatever you're going to call it. Keep it as graphic, click OK, and then just click on this first blank keyframe right here, right click, and then go paste frames. And boom, you'll see your objects pop in right here. And if we go to library, once again, you'll see it here. So we have cut, From Scratch, and New, all in our library. And just so you know, this method also applies to something that you've animated already, like that dancing scene that I showed you earlier. So I can just click here and highlight everything that I need. Again, right click and cut the frames, then go up to Insert, New Symbol. I'm going to call this one Dancing like I had before and click OK. Then I can just click on the first blank keyframe here, right click, and paste the frames. And then everything associated with that dancing animation will be pasted in and will turn into this symbol right here. Which means that if we go back to our main timeline, we can now get rid of, so if I hold Shift, I can get rid of, trash everything else, add a new layer onto here, call this one Dancing, and then I can just go over to the dancing symbol and drag it onto the stage, and we are good to go. And then if I need to change any of the movements, I can just double click, enter the symbol, and then mess with whatever I need. Now, because symbols are stored in our library, and you can see that I created a new one called Flower here, we can drag as many of them onto the stage as we want, which means we don't have to draw a whole bunch of different flowers or copy layers and keyframes to make more of them. Symbols allow us to create an asset once and then reuse it as many times as we need. And since all of them are the same symbol, when we double click to enter the container, whatever we do to any one of them, so if I alter this, you can see that by manipulating one, the other ones will automatically be updated as well. So that would include things like, changing its shape. Maybe it's, if I click on this, it could be changing the color of something. So if I change this to a different color, you can see all of them change as well. If you add anything, so let me just click away here. If I click on here and change my color to something, maybe increase the brush size and plunk something in the middle there, you can see that it adds it to all of them. Plus, if we animate something, so you can see this main one here is animated, the other ones won't show up right away. But when we go back to the main timeline, just like we learned before, all of them will actually have all those characteristics. So they'll animate and they'll have the little thing that we added. We changed the color here and manipulated this. All of them will be the same. But if we go to our free transform tool, we can still manipulate each one individually in terms of its scale, position, rotation, and kind of somewhat for its color. So if I click on this and then go down to color effects, we can, because this is a multicolored object, if I go to tint and try and change the color, it'll change the whole thing together. So if you have a single color one, that will work. But if you don't, then, get rid of the tint, and you could probably just try advanced here. So if I go to advanced, now I can kind of manipulate, the reds there. I can make it see-through or not. You can mess around with it a little bit to adjust the colors if you want. But just be aware that if you want to animate these separately, so have this one sway kind of different than this one, then you can't put them all on the same layer here. So if you need to animate your flowers uniquely, then make sure you put them each on their own layer. So this one, I'm going to go back to my library, bring in a new flower, adjust that one down, kind of scale it in so it fits kind of in right here. And then now I can go in and put a classic tween on this one, put a keyframe here at the end, and this one I can, sway and do whatever I want to. So you can see that it sways back and forth different from the other ones. Which means that anything we do to the container of a symbol that is on its own layer will be unique to that asset, the flower in this case, and anything we do within the container, so if I double click, will affect all of the flowers the same. So I move that over and then go back, you'll see that that impacts all of the other ones as well as the one that I manipulated. All right, so the final thing that I'm going to show you about symbols is called looping. And when you make a symbol, so if I go in here and put an animation within the symbol, so this is the animation, this ball just bounces once, you can, if we go back, you can have that animation loop over and over again. So I'll go here, loop over and over again, just keep bouncing. You can have it play once, like this one, where it just bounces and stalls at the top and is done. Or you can pick one single frame from that animation and have it be just stuck there, like this frame right here. So if you want to make your animated symbol loop over and over again, all you have to do is go over to your free transform tool, click on your symbol, and then go over to properties, and under object, go down to looping, and it'll be this first one right here. So if you hover over it, play graphic in loop. If you click on that, that'll make your animation loop over and over again. But the key here is this. If I double click within this symbol, you'll see that the animation in there is 2 seconds. So that's what I want to play over and over again is 2 seconds. So I want to make sure that on my main timeline here that I'm working in multiples of 2 seconds. If I just had this at 2 seconds, it would play once and stop. So I have it set at 4 seconds right here, so it's going to play twice. So if I watch this, boom, it's going to bounce once, the play once is going to stop, and the loop one is going to go one more time. If I want to extend that, then let's just go to 8 seconds here. So I can just click on these keyframes, like highlight these ones, and then go up here, right click, and then just add a frame. And then now if we go back to the start, it's going to bounce 4 times instead. So 1, 2, and you'll see that it'll keep going to the 4th one. The most common use for a looping symbol would probably be a walk cycle. So you animate the person taking 2 steps, and then you can just repeat it over and over again as the background moves by. If you want your animated symbol to just play once, then do the same thing. Go to your free transform tool, click on the symbol, go down to looping, but this time pick this one right here, the second one, play graphic once. You can also play it once in reverse if you want as well, but let's just stick to playing it once forward. Now, again, the key here is if we go into this symbol, we have to make sure that it's 2 seconds or longer. Otherwise, it won't even play through it once, right? So we know this is 8 seconds, so it'll just play to the 2 seconds, and then it'll stop right there. Now, just know that it'll stop on whatever the final frame is right here. So if you want this to stay there, then make sure your keyframe or whatever is there. If you don't, if you want it to disappear, then just go in here and highlight the 2 frames that are beyond the end of your animation, and then go up here, right click, and just put a blank keyframe for both of them, and you'll see it will disappear. So now when we go back and watch this one, it'll bounce for those 2 seconds, 1, 2, and then it'll disappear on that last one, and it'll be gone. Play once is commonly used for like really complex animations that have multiple layers when you don't want all those layers on your main timeline, like an explosion or maybe even like my dance animation from before. The only other thing you need to know about looping and play once is that for either of them, you don't have to start on frame 1. So if I go into frame picker for either of those two, we can go, hey, you know what? I don't want to start on frame 1. I'm going to start on frame 16, let's say. So now when we watch those, this one's going to start at frame 16. And you know what? Let's just change this one too. Let's just go to maybe 5. Okay, so now when these ones play, this one will start on 5, this one will be at 16, and they'll kind of stagger their bounce. This comes in handy if you have a whole bunch of copies of your looping animation going at the same time, and you want to make them look kind of diverse. Instead of them all happening in the same spot, you can kind of mix them up a little bit. If you want to select a single frame from an animation, then just click on that symbol, go down to looping, and pick this middle thing right here, play single frame for the graphic. Once you pick that, then you have to go down here to frame picker, and it'll give you a snapshot of all the frames that exist within that animation. So I'm going to pick 24 instead, and that'll be that one this time. And then once I exit out, you'll see that it'll say first at 24, and that's just the one that it will be stuck on. For me to explain how and when to use single frame, we're going to go into my animated symbol here because I have another thing set up. So far we've just seen this ball bouncing with this single face on it. But if I click on the face in here, I've actually set up single frame properly for this animation. So you can see that this is also a symbol. So if I double click on that, it'll bring me into that symbol, the face symbol in here. And as you can see, I only have 2 frames. So the first one is this happy face, and the second one is the grumpy face. So now if I go back, you'll see that this is how you would use it. So he's all happy as he's coming down, and then as he hits the ground, I'm going to click right here, and I'm going to right click and put a keyframe. At that point, I'm going to click back on my symbol so that I can go over to properties under object and down to looping, and I'm going to go to frame picker, and then this time I'm going to pick the grumpy face instead. So now as it bounces down here, it's going to switch to the grumpy face. Okay, so that's more of a clear example of how you would use that. So boom, it'll switch to the grumpy face. The most common use for single frame is probably lip syncing. So if we go in here, you would design like I did for these different faces. You would create 1 frame per kind of mouth configuration for each sound. So like S, they'd all have different looks for the mouth. And then when you were animating somebody talking, the lip syncing would match up each kind of look of your mouth with the proper sound. And then just so you can see another example of single frame, I have this rock, paper, scissors thing happening here. So arm 1 and arm 2 are the ones that I animated. And then I just parented the hand, the fist hand, like the rock hand, with each arm. So hand 2 is parented to the arm, and then hand 1 is parented to the other arm. And I animated those first, so just with the fist going like that. But you can see here that I have a keyframe right here that signals that this is still the fist, so at rock. And then when it's like, rock, paper, scissors, shoot, and then I put another keyframe right after it. And then if I go into that, you can see that I just have each of the hand configurations here, the 3 from this side over there, and then the next 3 over here. So then I can just click on this, go into looping, go into frame picker, and then just pick the hand that I want. So in this case, I was like, well, this guy's going to play paper. So I went with this one right here. This guy down here, when I clicked on his, I was like, go to frame picker. He is the other way, but he's going to pick scissors. And I just did the same thing. So then once they were done, it was like, oh, so this one, scissors cuts paper. And then I just went back to rock, like what you would do as you're like shooting here. And then boom, 1, 2, 3. And then they would shoot again. And this time rock beats scissors. And then for the last one, it goes back to the fist again. And then rock, paper, scissors. And boom, this guy, scissors, cuts paper. He wins. And that's all I got for symbols in Adobe Animate. If you got something out of this video, make sure to drop a like. And if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. And I'll catch you next time.